The recent death of Weymouth Police Sgt. Michael Chesna, killed July 15th in the line of duty while responding to a call of an erratic driver, highlights the dangers police officers faced even when responding to routine calls. Carolee McGrath sat down with Dudley Police Chief Steve Wojnar, the president of the Massachusetts Police Chiefs Association, to talk about the potential hazards police officers encounter in duty and the different legislative actions he'd like to see put into place to help protect them.
I think the entire police community, first of all, sends our deepest condolences out to his wife and children and the rest of his family, and certainly the officers from Weymouth and the neighboring area. Because I think what happens in these cases is that police officers can identify with that situation. It's a classic example of you never know what you're going to face. You know, and here's a situation where he was just responding to a simple accident call, maybe possible hit and run or something that maybe happens hundreds of times a day throughout the state. And it's right near the end of your shift. You're expecting just to kind of have it be fairly simple and go home, and it turns into something tragic. And so I think any police officer that's out there that has done the job knows that you can face anything at any time, and you really don't know what's around the corner, or what's approaching, or what you're walking into.
Do you think that perhaps the public doesn't understand what it is that you face day in and day out?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it, because especially if you're in either smaller towns or not as, less busy areas, people will say, well, it must be nice and quiet, nothing ever happens, you roll the streets up at night and everybody goes to bed. It doesn't happen that way. You just never know who's out there and who you're going to deal with. So the number one thing is usually people call the police when they have a situation that they can't handle. And definitely it's people sometimes that are out of control or violent or have some type of history. Or the other thing is when you stop a vehicle, you never know who's driving. And that person has in their mind what they're going to do. They have the jump on you, so to speak, because they're going to formulate a plan and do whatever they feel they're going to do. And you, as a police officer, have to react to that. So I think that's in some cases why some people may not fully understand. If a police officer approaches a vehicle in a certain way or talks to a person in a certain way, you're trying to just treat everybody the same, knowing that the person could be the sweet old lady that's on her way to church on Sunday morning, or it could be the escaped felon from someplace that's not going to jail. You just never know quite who that person is.
Do you think that all of the controversy surrounding these shootings has changed the way officers approach the job? Does it make them hesitate or rethink what they're going to do in a certain situation?
Well, I think everybody's going to be different, obviously, but I'm sure it causes some people to hesitate and wait, because we're in an instant information society right now. And so you notice when something happens, wherever it is in the country or even the world, that information is now spread throughout the internet very quickly. All the 24-hour news cycles that are running and everything else, the information that's out there. So there's such a high scrutiny on all these things as they're happening. So it's kind of re-educating a lot of the people about the job that we're doing and the things that we're trying to accomplish, and trying to balance that with some type of safety and security issues. So you have cases. Obviously, there's unfortunate cases, and if certainly somebody went too far with something, we want to deal with that effectively. But there are also cases where a person is legitimately justified in taking the action that they're taking, and you don't want to see the clamoring for charge somebody with murder and everything else like that that goes with all these circumstances.
What is the threshold, though? Because when you look at those cases, obviously there have been some. Well, listen, he was unarmed. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. Is what you'll hear. What is how are you trained? Like, when are you allowed to use deadly force? I mean, you're not trained to shoot somebody in the toe.
No,
right?
You're actually you're going to react to the situation, and you can obviously meet whatever level of force that you're seeing. The tough thing is, in cases, is you're asking people under high stress, usually under poor lighting conditions or any other variables that are around, distractions, noise, everything else that's happening. But you're asking them to make a split-second decision based on their surrounding and their environment at that particular time. And even in this latest case with Officer Chesna, he was attacked with a rock.
With a rock, right.
You never know. Anything out there could be a weapon. A person could be reaching for a cell phone. A person could be reaching for something else. And it's what are you perceiving in your mind at that particular time as that threat, and how are you going to appropriately meet that threat with the appropriate level of force.
Now, with Officer Shawn Gannon, who was shot and killed, the Weymouth police officer, back in the spring, there was a petition that had been started about, bail and about really looking at the judicial system and looking for legislative reform. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think a lot of it has to be looked at. We as an association have been looking at a lot of things, especially in the wake of that. We had reviewed a lot of different circumstances and things we could change. So part of it right now is obviously the training funding, which is now on its way to becoming fruition. But more in terms of other things, we had explored the possibility of the death penalty for individuals who kill a police officer. Because if you look at it in that vein, if you're willing to go kill a police officer, what are you going to do to the average person that's out there in the public?
And that's certainly controversial, and you're going to be.
It's going to mean a lot of
with a lot of
controversy, and we
challenges
know
on
it. But I think if nothing else, you're going to start the conversation about is it appropriate with things, and maybe there is some kind of compromise that can be reached in that. You're looking at other things like we were talking about mandatory dangerousness hearings. If you have a violent felony on your history and you're arrested for a violent felony, you have an automatic mandatory dangerousness hearing, where at least allow the person to have a hearing. Have a judge have a say on whether this person should be held or not held, and take some kind of action on it rather than just releasing them on bail to go appear and reoffend someplace else.